Every morning at exactly 7 o'clock, a small girl walked through the quiet street of Nurobad. Her name was Zara. She wore the same blue sweater every day, even in summer. In her little hand, she always held a single fresh flower, a rose, sometimes a lily, sometimes wildflowers from the roadside. And every morning, she stopped in front of the same old house at the end of the lane. The house looked forgotten by time. Its windows were closed. Its paint was peeling. The garden was dry. No sound ever came from inside. No one was seen entering or leaving, but still, Zara came every morning and left her flower at the door. Then she would stand silently for a moment, look up at the closed window above, and walk away without saying a word. Rahman, the old shopkeeper who owned the corner tea stall, had been watching her for weeks. At first he thought it was just a child's silly game, but she kept coming day after day, never missing once, not even when it rained. She would quietly lay the flower on the doorstep and walk back with her head down. "Who is she?" Rahman asked his customer one morning. "And why that house?" The customer shrugged. "Some orphan girl. Lives with her aunt. That house. Been empty for years. The old couple inside don't talk to anyone." That made Remen even more curious. Empty, yet someone lived there. And why did the girl come here? Daily. One day, Remen decided to find out for himself. He waited near his shop, pretending to clean. At exactly 7, Zara appeared, holding a yellow marigold. She walked past him without looking up, went straight to the house, placed a flower at the door, and whispered something. Then she looked up at the window, stood still for a moment, and turned to leave. Remen stepped forward. "Beta," he called gently, "why do you bring flowers here every day?" Zara froze, looked at him, then looked away. "It's nothing," she said softly, and walked faster. Remen didn't stop her again, but the way she said nothing didn't feel like the truth. It felt like a secret wrapped in sadness. That night, Remen asked the other shopkeepers about the house. "Used to be a happy home," said Javed the barber. "A couple lived there, had a baby girl, then something happened. A fire or sickness, I don't remember. They locked themselves inside after that." Another man added, "They never came out again. Some say the baby died. Some say she was taken. No one knows for sure." Rahman's heart ached. Could Zara be connected to them? Why else would a child leave flowers for a house of silence? The next morning, Remen waited again. Zara came, this time with a white daisy. She placed it gently on the doorstep. Her small fingers touched the ground carefully, like she was afraid to disturb the house. She looked up at the window, her eyes shining, and whispered, "Please come back. I'm still waiting." Remen gasped. The words were not for him. They were for someone behind that window. Zara turned and started to walk away. But this time, Remen followed quietly from a distance. She didn't go far, just around the corner to a small brick house. She opened the gate and went inside. Remen stood outside for a moment, then left. He didn't want to scare her, but now he had more questions than ever. That night, Remen couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about the house, the flowers, and the whisper. "Please come back. I'm still waiting." Waiting for whom? A mother, a father, a memory. The next morning, it rained hard. Roads were wet. Shops opened late. But at exactly 7, Remen saw Zara again. Her sweater was soaked. Her shoes were muddy. But in her hand, she held a bright red rose. She walked through the rain, reached the old house, and laid the rose at the door. Then she looked up, and this time, she smiled. Remen followed her eyes to the window, and there it was, a movement. A shadow, a figure behind the curtain. He stepped back in shock. Someone was watching. Someone was there. Zara didn't look scared. She stood quietly, her eyes full of hope. Then she turned and walked away, her wet hair sticking to her face. Rahman stood frozen. The house was not empty. The silence was not lifeless. Someone inside had seen the flower. Someone inside had heard the whispers. That evening, Remen decided to take a bold step. He walked up to the house after Zara had gone and knocked gently on the door. No answer. He knocked again. "Hello, my name is Remen. I have a small shop nearby. I just want to talk." Still no answer. He bent down, picked up the red rose, and placed it carefully back on the doorstep. Then he walked away. But as he turned the corner, he glanced back, and his heart skipped a beat. The rose was gone. Someone had taken it inside. The next morning, Zara came again with a pink flower. She noticed the red rose missing, and her eyes lit up. She placed the new flower down and whispered, "Thank you." Then, as usual, she looked up at the window, and this time, the curtain moved again. Remen, watching from his shop, felt something change. The story wasn't over. It was just beginning. The next morning, the street felt different. It was quieter, like the wind itself was waiting for something. Remen stood behind his stall, watching the corner where Zara usually appeared. And just like always, at exactly 7 o'clock, she came walking with a purple flower in her hand. Her steps were slow, thoughtful. The way she held the flower was careful, as if it carried a message. She reached the old house and gently placed the flower on the doorstep. This time, she didn't whisper. She only looked up at the window, her eyes full of questions. The curtain didn't move. The door didn't open, but she stood there longer than usual, as if waiting for something, anything. From a distance, Remen watched her closely. He could see the hope in her face. the kind of hope only a child could carry for so long without giving up. And when she finally turned to leave, her shoulders were heavier. Remen made up his mind. He wiped his hands on his apron, left his stall for a moment, and walked toward the old man who sold second-hand books near the mosque. Baba Salim, Rahman greeted. Do you remember the people who lived in that old house? The old man adjusted his glasses and squinted. Which house? The one at the end of Rose Street. The one where no one comes out? A girl leaves flowers there every morning. Salim's eyes softened. Ah, yes, that house. He paused for a moment. I remember them. I sold books to the man years ago. His name was Iqbal. He loved poetry. His wife Ruxana was a security chair. They had a baby girl, beautiful child. But something terrible happened. Rahman leaned in. What? The child went missing. One day she was there, the next she wasn't. The whole town searched. Posters were put up, police came, but nothing was found. After that, the couple stopped talking to everyone. They closed the windows, stopped answering the door. People whispered that the mother lost her mind. Riemann felt a chill in his chest. How old would that child be now? Salim thought for a second. Around 10 or 11, I think. Rahman's eyes widened. Zara was 10. That evening, he couldn't sit still. He kept thinking about the girl, the couple, and the flowers. Could it be? Could Zara be the child who disappeared all those years ago? He decided to visit Zara. Home he walked to the small brick house she had entered the other day. The door was half open. He knocked gently. A woman came out looking tired and cold. Her eyes were hard, but her voice was polite. Yes, I'm sorry to disturb you, Riemann said kindly. My name is Rahman. I run the tea stall. I just wanted to ask about Zara. The woman's face changed. What about her? She leaves flowers at the old house every morning. Do you know why? The woman looked down. I've told her not to. It's a useless habit. That house is cursed. But she goes anyway, Riemann said. She seems connected to it. The woman sighed. Zara is not my real daughter. I'm her aunt. Her parents died when she was a baby. We took her in. Did you ever tell her where her real parents lived? No, the woman said. Quickly. What's the point? That life is gone. We gave her a new one. But maybe, Riemann said slowly, that old life is not as gone as you think. The woman didn't answer. She just closed the door. That night, Riemann sat alone. In his shop, looking at an old town newspaper someone had left behind, he flipped through the pages and stopped when he saw a faded photo. It was a black and white image of a couple holding a baby girl. The headline read, Tragedy in Noorabad. Infant disappears from her cradle. Parents devastated. The couple was the same one who lived in the old house. And the baby. Riemann leaned closer. The baby had Zara's eyes. His hands trembled as he folded the paper and put it away. The pieces were coming together. The next morning, he watched from his stall again. Zara came, as usual, this time with a small yellow flower. She placed it gently on the doorstep, looked up at the window, and whispered, It's me. I don't know why, but I feel like I belong here. Rahman's chest tightened. He wanted to run to her, tell her everything, but he knew it wasn't his place. Not yet. He waited until she left, then walked slowly toward the house. He knocked once. No answer. He knocked again. Still nothing. He reached into his pocket and took out the newspaper. He placed it on the doorstep with a note. She's still waiting. Then he walked away. Later that day, Zara came home from school and found Riemann waiting near the gate. She looked surprised but didn't speak. I found something, he said softly. Something I think you should see. He handed her the newspaper and pointed to the photo. Zara stared at it, then at him. Her lips trembled. That's me, she said. I don't know how, but I know it. Riemann nodded. The people in that house, I think they are your real parents. Zara didn't cry. She just held the newspaper close and whispered. Zara couldn't sleep that night. The newspaper lay beside her pillow, the faded photo of the couple holding the baby haunting her thoughts. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the woman's face. The soft eyes, the sad smile, the gentle way she held the child. Zara had never seen her real parents, not in pictures, not in dreams. But something deep inside her whispered, that's them. That's home. She wanted to ask her aunt again, wanted to shout, to cry, to demand answers. But she knew it wouldn't help. Her aunt had made it clear, some doors were better left closed. But Zara didn't believe that anymore. Some doors weren't locked because of danger, they were locked because of fear. The next morning, Zara woke up earlier than usual. She picked a white jasmine from the bush near the gate and wrapped it gently in a piece of cloth. Her hands were shaking, but her heart felt stronger. This time, she wasn't just leaving a flower, she was leaving a piece of truth. She walked slowly toward the old house. The street was quiet, the sky still pale. As she reached the broken gate, she stopped and looked up at the window. The curtain didn't move. The house looked the same, but Zara felt different. She placed the jasmine on the doorstep. Then, from her pocket, she pulled out the newspaper photo. She had folded it carefully and wrote one sentence on the back. I think I'm your daughter. She laid it beside the flower, stood up, and whispered, Please, open the door, just once. Then she turned and walked away. She didn't look back this time. She had already given everything she had. Hours passed. The sun climbed higher. Inside the house, silence remained. But in one room, behind the old curtain, a man named Iqbal stared at the newspaper, his hands trembling. He had found it lying on the floor near the door, the flowers still fresh beside it. He recognized the photo immediately. It was his family, long before the pain, and the message written on the back had broken something inside him. He showed it to Ruxana, his wife. She sat in the corner, wrapped in her shawl, her eyes dull and tired. She didn't speak much anymore, not since the day their daughter disappeared. Iqbal sat beside her. She's alive, he said gently. She's been coming here every day. Ruxana looked at him slowly, unsure. She's the girl with the flowers, Iqbal continued. You've seen her too. I know you have. Ruxana's lips moved slightly. A whisper. Zara. Iqbal nodded. Yes, her name is Zara. Tears rolled down Ruxana's cheeks, but she said nothing more. She turned her face to the wall. Iqbal placed the jasmine and the note in front of her, hoping it would reach a place inside her that words couldn't. The next morning, Zara returned again, this time with a blue hibiscus. Her hands were cold. Her heart beat fast. She reached the house, and her eyes widened. The jasmine and the newspaper were gone, but in their place was a small envelope. She picked it up carefully, looked around, and then opened it. Inside was a short letter. You bring flowers. Why? Who are you really? Zara pressed the letter to her chest. She wanted to cry, laugh, scream, all at once. It was the first time the house had spoken back. She ran to Remen's tea stall, the envelope still in her hand. They replied, she said breathlessly. They, replied Remen, read the note and smiled softly. They're listening now. Keep going. That night, Zara wrote her own letter. She told them everything she knew, how she was raised by her aunt, how she always felt like something was missing, how the first time she walked past the house, her feet just stopped, like her heart remembered something her mind didn't. She ended with, I don't want to hurt you. I only want to know who I really am. The next morning, she placed the new flower, yellow sunflower, and the letter at the door. Then she waited. She sat on the steps across the street, hugging her knees. For hours, she stayed. People passed by and stared. Some whispered, but she didn't move. And then, just before sunset, the door creaked. Zara looked up sharply. The door opened just a little. A hand reached out. It took the letter and the flower. Then the door closed again. Zara didn't see the face, but it didn't matter. The door had opened. Inside the house, Iqbal sat at the table, reading the letter. Ruxana sat beside him, her hand resting on the sunflower. She remembers us, Iqbal said softly. Even if she doesn't know it yet. Ruxana said nothing. But that night, for the first time in years, she left her bedroom window slightly open. The wind carried in the scent of jasmine, and in the quiet room, the soft sound of hope returned. The open window stayed that way for 3 days. Zara noticed it the next morning and couldn't believe her eyes. It was small, barely a crack, but for her, it was everything. It meant the house wasn't asleep anymore. It meant someone inside was breathing, listening, maybe even waiting, just like she was. That day, Zara left a white rose and another letter. In it, she wrote about her dreams. How she often saw a woman with long black hair singing a lullaby she didn't know but felt familiar. She wrote about a garden that came in her dreams, full of sunflowers and marigolds, where someone always waited for her at the gate. I don't know if it's real, she ended, but when I stand in front of your house, my heart feels warm, like I've been there before. Inside the house, Ruxana read the letter again and again. Her hands trembled, and her eyes filled with tears. Iqbal, she whispered, I used to sing that lullaby. When she was a baby, her voice broke. Only she could remember it. Iqbal sat beside her, holding her hand. She didn't forget Ruxana, she just grew up far away. But her heart remembers. Hearts always do. The next morning, something changed. Zara arrived with a tulip and her usual hope. But this time, she found something waiting for her too, a folded note beside the door. Your words feel like pieces of a puzzle we lost long ago. Tell us, how did you come to live with your aunt? Zara's hands shook as she read the note. The house was not only awake, it was asking questions. The silence had turned into a voice. It was beginning to speak, and it wanted answers. That night she wrote everything she knew about the hospital fire, about how her aunt told her her parents had died, how no one ever showed her a photo or gave her a full story. She wrote about the first time she passed the old house and how something inside her pulled her back, again and again. I don't know why I bring flowers, she wrote. I just feel like someone is waiting for them. Meanwhile, Remen was watching all of it unfold with quiet awe. He didn't interfere. He didn't ask questions. But each day he placed a small glass of milk near his stall for Zara, and each day she drank it, smiled, and returned to her mission. But Zara's aunt was growing restless. She had noticed the change in Zara, her late-night writing, her quiet smiles, her distant gaze. One evening, she grabbed Zara's shoulder harshly. Where do you go every morning? Why are you always lost in your thoughts? Zara looked at her, unsure whether to lie or tell the truth. I go to the house at the end of the street. I think it might be where I belong. Her aunt's face turned cold. You belong here. That house is cursed. Those people are mad. Don't go back. Zara pulled away. Maybe they're not mad. Maybe they're just hurt. The aunt raised her hand, but then dropped it. They're nothing to you, she said bitterly, and walked away. But Zara had already made her choice. She wasn't going to stop. The door had opened. The silence had spoken, and her heart told her she was getting closer to something that had been missing her whole life. That night, she didn't sleep. She stared at the ceiling, holding the letters from the house like treasures. As the sky began to lighten, she got up quietly, took another flower and orange marigold and walked slowly through the dawn. This time, she brought a photograph with her. It was a picture of her when she was 2, sitting on a dusty floor with a toy in her hand. Her aunt had once shown it to her and then hid it away. Zara had found it again and now wanted to share it. She placed the marigold and the photo at the doorstep, along with a short note. This is the only picture I have of myself as a baby. I hope you recognize me, because I think I've found you. Inside the house, Iqbal picked up the envelope and opened it carefully. His hands froze when he saw the photo. His eyes filled with tears. This was taken in the hospital waiting room, he whispered. Look at the wall. Bad drawing behind her. It's the same one we saw the day she was taken. Ruxana clutched the photo, her face pale. It's her, she said through trembling lips. It's our daughter. But even now, they didn't open the door fully. Fear still lived in the corners of their home. What if she hated them? What if she didn't want them? What if they were too late? Zara waited all day, sitting on the edge of the footpath, her chin on her knees, but no one came out. That night, it rained. She couldn't sleep thinking about the photo. Had they seen it? Did they believe her? Morning came, and the rain had stopped. She walked again to the house, expecting to find nothing, but on the step was a small wrapped bundle. Inside was a baby blanket, worn, faded, but her name was stitched into it. Zara. In pink thread. Her breath caught. Her heart pounded. She hugged the blanket to her chest like it was the last piece of a broken memory. And then, for the first time, she saw it. The curtain moved fully aside. The window opened and behind it stood a woman, older, thinner, her hair streaked with gray. But her eyes were the same as Zara's. They stared at each other, in silence. One heart breaking open, the other finally beginning to heal. Zara didn't move, neither did the woman. Zara didn't move for a long time. The woman behind the window didn't either. It felt like time had frozen, like the world had paused just for them. Rain dripped slowly from the rooftops. A dog barked somewhere in the distance. But all Zara could hear was her heartbeat, loud and fast. She kept her eyes locked on the woman's face, so familiar, so full of sorrow and wonder. And then, just as quietly as it had opened, the window closed. The curtain fell back in place. The moment was gone, but something had changed. Zara clutched the old baby blanket tightly. The pink thread that spelled her name was loose in places, but it still held just like she had. She turned slowly and walked back down the street, her mind spinning with questions. Was that really her mother? Did the woman recognize her? Was the door going to open next time? At Riemann's tea stall, she sat down quietly. He brought her a warm cup of milk without saying a word. After a while, she looked up and spoke. I saw her, she said softly. At the window? She looked at me. Riemann nodded. She knows now. She just doesn't know how to come back from all those years of pain. Zara sipped the milk slowly. Why is it so hard? I'm here. They're here. What are they waiting for? Sometimes the hardest thing, Riemann said gently, is believing you still deserve love after losing it for so long. That evening, inside the silent house, Iqbal watched Ruxana from the doorway. She was sitting near the window again, holding the baby blanket in her lap, her fingers slowly tracing the pink thread over and over. She looks just like you, he said. Especially her eyes. Ruxana didn't reply. Her voice had become a rare thing these days, used only for whispers and memories. But her eyes said enough. They were red, swollen, and wet with the tears of a mother who had waited too long to cry. She's not angry, Iqbal continued. She's kind, brave. She's been leaving flowers here for weeks, and we stayed silent. Still no answer. But Ruxana's hands trembled now. Her shoulders shook, and then a sound escaped her lips, a broken sound, the sound of a sob. Iqbal walked to her slowly, sat beside her, and held her hand. It's not too late, he whispered. We may have lost 10 years, but we haven't lost her. That night, Zara wrote another letter. Her handwriting was shaky, her words simple. I don't want anything from you. Not answers, not explanations. I just want to sit with you, even if we don't talk. Even if we don't understand each other yet. I just want to be near you. She placed the letter and a red rose at the doorstep the next morning and sat across the street again, waiting. But the door didn't open. No window moved. She stayed for hours. Still nothing. The next day she came again, this time with a sunflower, then a note that said only one sentence. Please don't shut the window forever. No reply. On the third day, there was a letter waiting for her. She opened it with shaking hands. We are not ready. We don't know how. But we see you. We feel you. Please be patient. Zara smiled through her tears. It wasn't a yes, but it wasn't a no either. It was a small crack and a big wall. And that was enough for her, but not for everyone. Her aunt had started noticing her absence each morning. One day she followed her quietly, She watched Zara place a flower and a note. She saw her sit across the street. She waited until Zara walked away and then marched straight to the house. She knocked hard, her voice angry. "Stop this. Leave the child alone. She doesn't belong to you anymore." Inside, Iqbal and Ruxana stood frozen. The aunt shouted again. "You gave her up. You shut the door when the world was burning. I raised her, not you." Iqbal slowly opened the door just a little. "We didn't give her up. She was taken. We were told she died." The aunt's eyes widened. "That's a lie." "It's the truth," Iqbal said, voice low but steady. "We searched everywhere. The hospital made a mistake. We mourned her for years." The aunt's anger faded into confusion. She stepped back, suddenly unsure. "She's my family now," she said, softer. "I was all she had." "She still needs you," Iqbal said gently. "But she needs us too," Zara returned the next morning, unaware of the argument. But something was different. A small envelope sat beside the flower she had left the day before. She picked it up and opened it slowly. Inside was a photo. It was old, faded, and soft at the edges. But in the center was a baby wrapped in the same pink-stitched blanket, and behind the baby were two smiling faces, Iqbal and Ruxana. Written at the back were 4 words. "You were never forgotten." Zara's breath caught. Her fingers pressed the photo to her heart. She looked up at the window, and this time, the curtain was fully pulled aside. Ruxana stood there, her face pale but calm. She lifted her hand and placed it gently against the glass. Zara stood. She raised her own hand, mirroring her. 2 palms separated by 1 thin sheet of glass, and 10 years of pain. But at that moment, it felt like they were touching, that they always had been. Neither spoke. Neither needed to, because sometimes, love doesn't come through words. It comes through flowers, photos, silence, and a window that finally stays open. Zara couldn't stop staring at the photograph. She held it like a treasure, afraid that if she blinked, it might vanish. The baby in the photo was her wrapped in the same pink blanket, smiling with no idea of the years of separation that would follow. Behind the baby, her real parents stood close together, joy glowing in their eyes. For the first time in her life, Zara saw the faces of the people who had brought her into the world, and they weren't strangers anymore. That day at school, she barely listened. Her mind was still at the doorstep of the old house, by the open window, where a woman had placed her hand on the glass and silently called her daughter home. Zara could feel something building, slowly, carefully, like the soft bloom of a flower in early spring. When school ended, she didn't go straight home. Instead, she walked slowly toward Remon's tea stall. He looked up from cleaning a glass and smiled. "You look like someone carrying a secret," he said gently. Zara handed him the photograph. "They sent this to me today." Ramon studied it for a long moment, then nodded. "That's love," he said. "Love doesn't forget, even when it's buried under years of silence." Zara sat quietly for a while, staring at the photograph again. "I want to go inside the house," she said. "Not just wait outside. I want to sit with them, talk to them. I want to know everything." Remon's expression became thoughtful. "Then write one more letter," he said. "Tell them you're ready, and ask if they are too." That night, with her hands shaking slightly, Zara wrote the most important letter of her life. "Dear Amma and Abba, I know you're scared. Maybe I am too, but I think it's time. I want to come inside. Not just to know you, but to heal with you. If you're ready, I'll be waiting outside the house tomorrow evening. Just open the door." The next day felt endless. Zara kept checking the time, her heart jumping every time the hour hand moved. She carried the letter and a red first one she had ever left weeks ago, now chosen again for something much bigger. She reached the house just before sunset. The sky was painted in orange and gold, the shadows growing long. She placed the letter and flower on the step, then sat on the edge of the opposite footpath, knees pulled close, eyes fixed on the door. Minutes passed. Then an hour, nothing. Wind began to blow gently, and darkness slowly took over the sky. Streetlights flickered on one by one. Zara pulled her sweater tighter, trying not to lose hope. Just as she was about to stand and leave, the sound came, a soft click, the sound of a lock turning. She froze, breath held. The door creaked open just a little. Iqbal stood there, holding the letter she had written. His eyes were tired but kind, full of emotions too big for words. He stepped aside and nodded. Zara, single quotes art, pounded. Slowly, step by step, she walked toward the house. Her legs felt heavy. She crossed the threshold. For the first time, the smell of old wood and quiet memories filling her nose. Inside, everything was still. Dim light filled the room. Old photos on the wall, dusty furniture, and the soft ticking of a clock were the only sounds. And then, Ruxana appeared at the edge of the hallway. She looked like she was made of glass, like one wrong word could shatter. But her eyes met Zara's, and in that moment, something shifted. Zara walked closer. No one spoke. She stopped just a few feet away. Then, slowly Ruxana raised her hands and held them out. Zara stepped into them, and they wrapped around her like a promise. Tears flowed silently from both of them. No loud cries, no questions. Just the soft sound of broken hearts becoming whole again. Iqbal stood nearby, his own eyes wet. one hand covering his mouth. He couldn't move, afraid the scene in front of him might disappear if he blinked. Minutes passed in silence, the kind of silence that heals rather than hurts. Later, they sat together on the old couch. Zara looked around the room. I feel like I've been here before, she whispered. Roxana nodded. Your crib used to be near that window. You loved staring at the sky. Iqbal smiled. You once took your first step right there. He pointed. We clapped so loudly, you cried. Zara smiled through her tears. I don't remember any of it, but it still feels like home. They sat there for a long time, talking softly, sharing memories, filling in the missing years. Ruxana showed her the drawer full of baby clothes she had never been able to give away. Iqbal showed her an old diary filled with letters he had written but never sent. Outside, Remen watched from his stall. He saw the light inside the house glowing brighter than ever before. He closed his eyes and whispered, finally. Zara began visiting the old house every day. It no longer felt strange. The quiet halls, the dusty furniture, the faded curtains, they all slowly started becoming familiar. Her steps no longer hesitated at the door. She no longer waited outside. Each morning, the door opened before she could knock, and each evening, she left with a little more warmth in her heart. Iqbal would sit in the old armchair, glasses slipping down his nose, reading her pages from poetry books he used to love. Ruxana would sit beside Zara on the couch, brushing her fingers through Zara's hair, the same way she once did when she was a baby. Sometimes, they said very little. Sometimes, they talked for hours, trading stories like puzzle pieces, her memories with her aunt, their memories before the fire, the gap between them slowly filling with trust. One morning, Zara brought them something special. A drawing she had made, 3 figures standing beneath a house, holding hands, with flowers growing all around them. She placed it on the wall just beside the family photo from 10 years ago. Ruxana stared at it for a long time. The flowers you brought, she whispered, they kept me alive. I didn't understand why at the time, but I looked forward to them. Each one was like a breath I thought I'd never take again. Iqbal smiled. They weren't just flowers, Beta, they were your voice before you found the courage to speak. Zara smiled shyly. I didn't know why I was doing it. I just felt like someone was listening. Ruxana reached for her hand. We were even if we didn't know how to reply. But not everything was perfect. Her aunt had grown distant. Since the reunion, she rarely asked questions anymore, rarely spoke unless necessary. Zara could feel the tension every time she returned home. One night, she found her aunt sitting alone, staring at an old photo frame on the shelf. Are you okay? Zara asked gently. Her aunt didn't look up. I raised you. I was the one who fed you, bathed you, stayed up with you when you were sick. And now, just like that, you found new parents. Zara stepped closer. They're not new. They're my real parents. But you're the one who saved me. I know that. I love 'em, but I love you too. Her aunt's voice cracked. I was afraid if I let you go back, you'd forget me. Zara hugged her tightly. I could never forget you. You're part of my story. You always will be. Tears fell silently from her aunt's eyes, and for the first time in weeks, she returned Zara's hug. The walls between them didn't vanish completely, but they began to soften. The next day, something incredible happened. Ruxana invited Zara's aunt for tea. I know we've never spoken, she said gently on the phone, but I think we should. For Zara. At first, the aunt refused. But later that evening, she came. She sat stiffly on the edge of the sofa, hands in her lap, unsure of where she belonged in this quiet room filled with past and present. I know we hurt you, Iqbal said gently, but we didn't know. We were told she died. We grieved for years. The aunt looked at him. I wasn't told anything, just that she was abandoned. I didn't know who she was until the police handed her over. She was so small, so quiet. I couldn't give her everything, but I tried. You gave her life, Ruxana said, her eyes soft. You gave her love. You kept her safe. We can never repay you for that. For a long time, the room was silent. Then Zara placed a cup of tea in her aunt's hands and sat between them. You both love me, she whispered, and I love you both. That's all that matters. That evening, for the first time, laughter echoed in the old house. Not loud, not constant, but enough to make the walls feel alive again. Over the next few days, things continued to change. Iqbal brought down an old trunk from the attic filled with baby clothes, shoes, and toys. He handed Zara a small wooden rattle. You used to chew on this all the time, he chuckled. Ruxana gave her a necklace simple, with a tiny silver bird. I bought this the day before you were born. I always meant to give it to you on your 12th birthday. Zara held the necklace close, her heart full. But as joy returned to her life, she also began to think about the other children, those who didn't find their way back home, children who were still waiting. One afternoon she sat with Riemann and told him her idea. I want to start something, she said, a place where children and families can share stories. Maybe even find each other again. Riemann smiled. A flower house, he said. That's what we'll call it. With help from the community, they started a small notice board. Outside Riemann's shop, people came to post missing posters, old photos, messages. Within weeks, stories began to flow in: lost siblings, forgotten relatives, families torn by war, fire, or time. Zara stood by the board every day, offering help, hope, and sometimes just an ear to listen. The girl who once left flowers at a silent door had now become the girl who helped open many others. But even with all this, her favorite place was still the old house. Each evening, she returned, sometimes with a flower, sometimes with a story, sometimes with just a quiet heart. Iqbal would be in his chair, Ruxana in the kitchen, preparing her favorite tea. The house, once silent and forgotten, now breathed with laughter, light, and love. And Zara, once a mystery to herself, was now a daughter, a niece, a light for others. The house had opened, the past had healed, and the flowers had never stopped blooming. The day of Zara's 12th birthday arrived with a sky painted in soft gold and gentle clouds drifting like paper boats. The entire neighborhood seemed to wake up earlier than usual. Birds chirped louder. The breeze carried the scent of roses. And Remen's tea stall was decorated with strings of tiny white lights. But the real magic wasn't in the weather or the decorations, it was in the quiet. Joy that filled the hearts of everyone who had watched Zara's journey from a silent girl with flowers to a daughter who had brought healing to more than just her own family. Iqbal stood in front of the mirror, struggling with his tie. Ruxana, smiling, stepped forward to fix it. They both looked different now, lighter, brighter, as if the weight of 1,000 yesterdays had finally lifted from their shoulders. Are you ready? Ruxana asked gently. I've been waiting 12 years, Iqbal said, eyes full of emotion. I think I'm more than ready. Meanwhile, in the small house down the lane, Zara's aunt helped her fix her dress. It was white with soft blue flowers printed across the skirt. You look beautiful, her aunt said softly. Zara smiled. I feel like I'm finally me. Her aunt hesitated, then added, You've made me proud, you know? You didn't just find yourself, you helped others too. Zara took her aunt's hand. I couldn't have done it without you. You were my first home. Tears shone in the woman's eyes, and you were my second chance. That afternoon, the little garden behind the old house filled with neighbors, friends, and even strangers who had been touched by Zara's story. A long table was set with simple food, a cake, and vases full of all the flowers Zara had once left. At the doorstep, sunflowers, roses, tulips, and marigolds. It wasn't fancy, but it was perfect. Ruxana and Iqbal stood with Zara in the middle of the garden as people began arriving. Remen brought tea for everyone and joked with the children. Baba Salim, the old bookseller, handed Zara a wrapped book of poems with a note inside, to the girl who brought stories back to life. One by one, people approached Zara to share their own stories. A woman reunited with her sister after 15 years because of the flower board. A man found a letter from a lost daughter that gave him peace. A young boy thanked Zara for helping his father believe again. Zara listened to each one with a full heart. She hadn't expected any of this when she first placed a single flower on a quiet doorstep. All she wanted was to find where she belonged. But now she realized that sometimes, finding your place also means helping others find theirs. As the sun began to set, casting long golden shadows across the garden, Iqbal stood beside Zara and cleared his throat. May I say something? He asked the small crowd. Everyone fell silent. I want to thank you all for being here, Iqbal began. For years, this house was filled only with silence. We believed we had lost everything. But then, one by one, the flowers began to appear, and slowly, our hearts began to wake up. He turned to Zara. You brought us back, Betna. You gave us our lives again. Today, on your 12th birthday, we want to give you something too. He held out a small box. Zara opened it and gasped. Inside was a golden key on a delicate chain. It's the key to this house, Ruxana said, voice trembling. Because this is your home. It always was. Zara threw her arms around both of them. Thank you, she whispered, tears running down her cheeks. Thank you for finding me. After the cake was cut and the sun finally dipped below the horizon, fairy lights flickered across the garden. Music played softly from a radio near the steps. Zara danced with the neighborhood children, her laughter echoing through the air like the sweetest song. Later that night, after everyone had gone home, Zara sat alone on the steps of the house. The night was cool, and the stars sparkled above. She looked up at the sky, clutching the key around her neck. She heard footsteps behind her. It was her aunt. She sat down beside her and handed her a folded letter. What's this? Zara asked. Something I wrote for you. A long time ago, when you were just a baby, I was too afraid to give it to you back then. Zara unfolded the paper slowly. To the little girl who came into my life when the world seemed dark, you brought light. I didn't give you life, but you gave mine meaning.